So what's accountability? The reason why we're doing this workshop is because what we really want to do is build a thriving company. And so a thriving company means that you are thriving and the company is thriving. There are 5 components to a thriving company. What is thriving? See, when you're really alive and you think about a kid like, oh, he's really thriving. So when a company is thriving, there are 5 significant parts. Number 1 is that the owner has major freedom and satisfaction. If you don't have satisfaction and if you are not free and it's too dependent on you, what's the point of it? And so goes the leader, so goes the organization. So the idea here is to actually reduce the dependency on the owner and allow the team to thrive. The main thing we're going to focus on today is one small component of a thriving team. You see, we have thriving teams and thriving systems, but we're going to focus today just on this component called thriving teams. And there's a component called asset ability and sales and marketing. So if you look at all of these components together, what you see is a thriving organization. The owner's thriving, the teams are thriving, the system is thriving. See, business is a system, and whoever has the best system of systems wins. So the point of asset ability is to build an asset, not a glorified job. An asset is something that you can step back from or you can step out of. And lastly, is sales and marketing. Sales and marketing is the ability to drive new business through lead generation, lead development, lead conversion. If you don't have that happening, nothing's happening. But what we found when we've done surveys and worked with thousands of clients and thousands of companies all over the world, that this one component seems to be such a hot button, is getting other people to do what you want them to do and what they should be doing. But here's the problem. The problem is that 78% of the people literally on this workshop are working longer and harder than everybody else, which is crazy. And what's the point of doing that? The point is to build a company where we're all working together, so it's not so dependent on you, the owner. And when you do that, the whole world changes. You see, when you don't have a thriving company, what you end up is you're solving other people's problems. And the company is overly dependent on you, which means that if you're not at work or if you're not available, the company is not thriving. You can't focus on your greatest habit. What's your greatest habit? The highest and best use of your time. Because your job as a leader is to focus on the highest and the best use of your time, not the lowest and the worst use of your time, not those things that are urgent and important all the time. If you want to fly the plane, stop serving drinks in the back of the plane and fly the plane. When you don't have a sense of accountability, what happens is that you're shouldering all the burdens yourself. And it's really not any fun. But when you can spread it out among everybody else and everyone feels responsibility and ownership, then you get so much more done. And ultimately, you have inconsistent, poor performance. And so when you don't have accountability, these are all the issues that we have. I was just working with a fellow just earlier this week. We're going to call him Bill Evans. Bill is amazing. He's got a very large team, and he was totally out of pocket for 3 weeks. Why was he out of pocket? Because he went to go be on site so they could do the contract. Why? Because he says, when I'm on site, everything happens better and it's working. It works so much quicker and we make so much more money. That is the world's worst thing. We want to break that dependency, not create more dependency. So by mastering the art of accountability, you'll be able to improve 3 things. Number 1 is having people feel more a sense of accountable, but not dumped on. Number 2, have a sense of ownership, because when you own something, you care about it. And number 3 is a sense of urgency. Most owners have a sense of urgency, but their team doesn't necessarily share that sense of ownership and that sense of urgency to actually make things happen. So let's jump in. My intention here is to share with you the 6 best strategies and insights you can actually use to start making things happen. We're going to jump right into it, and I want to share with you now what those 6 are. Number 1, it's the inner game. The difference between one successful leader and another is 6 inches between your left ear and your right ear. So it's the inner game of accountability. That's where it starts first. And the second step is what we'll call the sword of accountability. And I'll explain what the sword of accountability is. The third step is understanding upward jumping monkeys. This is an upward jumping monkey, and we'll talk about how to deal with upward jumping monkeys, what causes them, and how to improve the situation. The fourth of 6 things is becoming a coach, not a cop. Most business owners are so busy, they're being cops all the time. The next piece is making it real and giving feedback loops. And I'll explain what it all means, but I want to give you a context of what it is. And lastly is courageous conversations. It's the ability to have a healthy, courageous conversation with your team and actually hold them accountable. So let's jump in. The inner game of accountability is fundamental. You can't get anything done and can't go anywhere in terms of the practical tools of helping other people until we deal with the inner game. So let me ask you, what's holding you back? What do you think holds most leaders back from holding other people accountable? Well, what we find is that most people have a serious avoidance of confrontation. They're simply just uncomfortable with holding others accountable, because if I hold you accountable, that means that you're not going to like me, and it's going to be really uncomfortable, and a lot of people just don't like doing it, and me too. So we're going to have to figure out, how do we deal with this uncomfortable aspect of confrontation? The next is, most leaders have a real need to be needed. That's why they're leading, because when they go to a group environment, they see what needs to happen, and they just naturally step up. So if you're a leader, you're for sure doing that. Now, the mistake that most people make is that my ego is my amigo. If you want to change and you want to get other people to be accountable, we need to let go of our ego. There's a great surgeon who recently had his picture taken with his whole staff. And they said, no, we want to get your picture. He said, no, it's not me without my team. So he was able to remove his ego. So too, once you make other people look great, you'll end up looking greater yourself. And that's by how we get rid of our ego. What that means is the leader who gives up more control maintains more power and influence than the one who actually keeps it. This is from Dave Marquette. Dave Marquette took the Santa Fe, which was the worst performing nuclear submarine in the entire US Navy. And he took it from worst to first by giving up control. But my friends, you're a fool if you give up control. If you don't, increase competency and increase accountability and ownership. And so we're going to talk about now specifically how to do that. Let's take a look at Daniel Eli. Daniel is a dear friend and someone I worked with for a long time. Daniel in a company called Prepaid Experts. Daniel was a little bit stuck. He was brilliant, and he is brilliant, and he was a genius guy. This is a picture from our board. In our center, we have boards, and on the walls, when you write on the walls, they're all captured electronically. And so we said, what does your organization look like? How are decisions made? And if you notice, this is Dan here, and all roads lead back to Dan. And it was like, what? This is a mess. Why? Because Dan always had the best insights. And so people would come back to Dan. But you know, it's never going to be able to evolve unless you make a shift. So what did it look like afterwards? Well, we actually created a proper organization chart where things flow. And that means he had to actually empower other people. And the way that he did that was simplify, codify, and multiply. To simplify the processes, codify them with systems, and multiply them out so other people could do that. The thing that gets most in our way as leaders, as a big block, is that inner game is only I can do it. Meaning that really I'm the best one at doing it. And so there's 4 mindsets that really support this only I can do it. Why? Why do you end up doing it? It's oftentimes so much quicker and easier to do it yourself. Also, it takes too long to coach somebody. If you're like most of us, you're really busy and you have more demand than capacity. So that's our definition for stress. What is the definition of stress? When demand exceeds capacity. When you have more to do than you have ability to do it. And the truth is, it's when more perceived demand exceeds perceived capacity. So the next thing is that I'll get better results if I do it myself. How many of us know that if I do it, it'll be so much better? Dave Garofalo, who is one of the most amazing people I've ever met. We worked with Dave for a long time, and Dave now has the world's largest cigar retailer on the planet. And he had to make a shift that if he had kept his one store, he would be the best at it, but it's better to have multiple stores and to grow and to do it not quite as much as just me doing it, but having everyone else do it almost as good as me. So in other words, let the results be done by other people. And finally, I've been burned so many times before. I'll bet you've been burned. You've delegated someone and you even call it babysitting, right? So I want to ask you now, which of these traits relate most to you? So what I want to do now is, okay, so I want to ask you now to please vote. Which of these inner game blocks relates most to you? Which is it? Is it easier and quicker to do yourself? Does it take too long to coach somebody else? Or I'll get better results if I do it myself, or I've been burned so many times before. So what's most applicable for you? It looks like our winner. We're almost there in terms of voting. Come on, make sure you vote. We got a neck and neck hatting between easier and quicker to do it myself. Okay, so I'm going to stop the polling right now. And what we've got, okay, well, no, keep going. We only got a small percentage of the people that have, no, now we got a good chunk of the people that have voted. I'm going to call the end to the polling, and last vote just got in under the wire, and I'll share the results. The results are that it's easier and quicker to do it myself. The next thing is that I'll get a better result if I do it myself. So the idea is that the only way that we can really grow is by letting go a little bit. And so what we want to do is shift our mindset. The mindset is that accountability is actually a good thing. Many people think it's not good for them, it's not good for me. You're uncomfortable, but the truth is it's good. Why? People actually want to be held accountable. Counter to popular culture today, people want to be held accountable, even though it might not make them feel fair, it might make them feel good about themselves. But if you do it in the right way, they'll feel great about themselves, and they want to grow and improve. Also, they want real and honest feedback. If you have any millennials working for you, this is the number one thing that they want, is honest feedback. Help me grow. And if it's done right, you won't be seen as a jerk, but rather you'll be seen as a coach who really cares. And finally, you won't be considered a hypocrite. See, this is really one of the biggest problems. What's that mean? It means that do what I say, not what I do. Because the truth is, maybe you're coming in late, or maybe you're leaving early, or maybe you're taking off time, and you're having other people do stuff. So if you do think that maybe you're going to be a hypocrite, if we move to step number 2, you won't have that problem. So the first thing is changing the inner game. And we spoke about the inner game of accountability. Next, let's talk about the sort of accountability. What's the sort of accountability? Really, we have to walk the walk. And that means that before you hold others accountable, you yourself need to be held accountable. And if you're not willing to do that, they'll totally call you on it. You see, the sort of accountability cuts both up and down. Before you can ever hold anyone else accountable, you need to be transparent and say what I will be held accountable for. So I guess that's going to be the question, is who's going to hold you accountable? And if you're running the organization, most people who run organizations are typically not prepared and willing to be held accountable. But that is where the magic happens. So with Daniel and Eli, what we did was we said, we're going to do a contract. Because his team said, what we really want, Dan, for you to do your genius and let us do the other stuff. And so here's what you're going to focus on. You're going to focus on 1 day a week of focusing on the mission of continuous improvement, and 2 days a week of doing your duties as marketing research and development director. And so he signed it. That means that this is what he was going to do and what he was not going to do. And once we had all these agreements signed, the results were amazing. What are the results? That he nearly increased his sales by over 10 times, and he got to over $100 million, which is pretty amazing. They reduced the dependency on him by 90%. He was able to take off 4 months, and the company pretty much run itself. He increased what we call the asset ability, which is the ability to sell it, to step back or step out of, and provide for your team, provide for your customers. And he was able to sell it. And he was able to sell it for a really decent number, so that now he has the freedom to do whatever really he wants and what he wants to do most. And he's really volunteering and mentoring and helping other leaders now. So if you are willing to give up and be willing to be held accountable and hold others accountable, you'll make a big shift. If you'd like to learn how to become accountable. So put now, chat me and just put the word personal into it. And I'll send you what we call the 5-step action, the 5-step action plan to personal accountability. Because it all starts with us. So goes the leader, so goes the organization. So go ahead in your chat button, in your chat bar now, just go ahead and send me a chat and put in the word personal. Okay, great. I'm sending it, getting it? Very good. Okay, Chantel, we got it. Yes, Chantel, okay, Rod, whoa, very good. So we'll make sure that you get your 5-step action plans for you to be held accountable to what? The highest and best use of your time. The highest and best use of your time is that which matters most, not the lowest and worst use of your time, the things that are important but not urgent. So step number 1 was the idea of the inner accountability. Step number 2 of 6 is the sort of accountability, being willing to be held accountable before you can hold others accountable. Now, let's talk about upper jumping monkeys. What are upper jumping monkeys? So upper jumping monkeys are when a monkey is on one of your employees' back, they come in and they're like, oh, hey, how do I deal with this? It happens all the time. I assure you that you're struggling with upper jumping monkeys, and they're very loud. And before you know it, like you have this whole stack of monkeys. It wasn't what you intended on doing, and you're working for them instead of them working for you. And and you're frustrated because you're not able to do what really matters most, and you're not flying the plane. So how do we deal with this? So you might think that what you really need is monkey repellent. Monkey repellent means that I'm going to spray you and get these evil monkeys away. But I'll tell you, that's not what you really need. It's not their fault. Rather, what we really need is a mirror. And what we really need is a mirror. And this mirror is something I would put on my desk, and I'd say, I'm responsible. By the way, mirror, as opposed to glass, glass looks out and it says, oh, it's all them. It's all their problem, their mistakes. When you have mirror, you look at yourself and you say, I'm responsible. And what gets in the way sometimes of us being able to look at ourselves in an honest way is there's silver on the back of the mirror and the money gets in our way. And so if you think about really empowering other people, then you'll be able to, then you'll really be able to grow and build a sense of ownership, a sense of accountability, and a sense of urgency. What happens here when you're uber responsible is that you actually create learned helplessness. Learned helplessness means that you have taught them to be in a codependent relationship. A codependent relationship means that you're accountable, that you have to be answering and fixing all their problems, and they're now dependent on you to do it. One of the best ways to do this, by the way, go take a vacation. And I can't tell you how many times companies will step up because they've had the opportunity. You see, you've trained them to become dependent on you. So how do we break this? The first thing is to understand that your wonderful gift of being uber responsible, being really caring, being really supportive is actually a great light, and it's also a great shadow. You see, many times our great lights are also our great shadows. Little light, little shadow. Big light, big shadow. So when you're the sort of person that you really know how to design CAD systems, or you really know how to negotiate contracts better, or you really know how to do estimating better, or you really know how to solve problems better, so that's your great light. And your great shadow is that you're creating dependence on you. Instead, we want to think a little bit about realizing that we have amazing people working for us. And we want to believe in them. You know, if you take a look at an elephant's really interesting. An elephant can carry 19,841 pounds, incredible powerful. They can pick up 770 pounds with their trunk alone. So, you know how circuses have elephants. So I guess the question you ask for a circus is, how do you get an elephant to actually stay there? What holds this elephant back? They're so powerful, right? 20,000 pounds. Why can't you just break free? You know the answer? It's because of this little rope right here. See, when they were young, they put a simple rope around them and they can't pull away from it because they're young. And so they learned that they can't do anything. So too, in running an organization. When you start up running organizations, oftentimes it's still dependent on the leader. And you get to a certain point where it can no longer be dependent on you. And that modus operandi that worked in the past isn't going to work in the future. as Marshall Goldsmith says, what got you here isn't going to get you there. And so we want to break that dependence. And how are we going to do it? Well, let's overcome it. It's by moving on to step number 4. So step number 1, we said, is the way that we think about accountability. And step number 2, it's the sort of accountability, us being willing to be held accountable. So step number 3 is understanding these upward jumping monkeys. And really, when we said that what's causing the upward jumping monkeys is us. And so what I want to share with you, the way that we're going to switch this is, I had a question here. Oh, very good. So Jeff said by being personal. That's how we're going to overcome this, is by becoming a coach and not a cop. The reason why this is so important, most business owners and leaders, they're so busy, they don't have time to be a coach, and they don't really want to be a coach. But I'll tell you, the old way was to be a cop. The new way is to be a coach. If you want to lead in today's environment, it's to learn how to be a coach and bring out the best in other people. It's all about coaching, not catching. The old way was like catching what you did wrong, and that totally doesn't work. So how do you do that? It's by changing your mindset about coaching. So you see, we want to actually really believe in the people who are working for us. And there's a lot of things that get in our way of believing in the people that work for us. You know, you like your Wolkas, and you think like, oh, they're a bunch of idiots. I was working with a client once, and he was from New York, and he says, you know, I got all these stupid Wolkas, and he literally viewed his team like they're slaves, and they were stupid. But there's something called the Pygmalion effect, which means if you believe in them enough, they'll actually rise to the occasion. And it's not just a cute idea. There was an experiment that was done with the Army. 115 soldiers that were in the leadership training program. And they told the commanders that what we want you to do is we want you to memorize their names and their scores by heart. And what I'm going to tell you is that this group, they really have excellent potential. They're much smarter and more talented than you have a regular group. And there was a group that we didn't know. So they had expectations. Remember, you inspect what you expect, and whatever you expect happens. The results were, check this out, that those that they thought were going to do better way outperformed than those that didn't. But keep in mind, this was all random, which tells us an amazing thing. That if you believe in something, if you believe in someone, they rise to the occasion because they believe in it. And then the goal is something called the Galatea principle, which is actually helping them to believe in themselves as well. My son, I say, you're amazing. You're a big blessing. You are so talented. You're such a smart boy, but you try really hard and you solve problems. So every time I see him, he's like, yeah, I'm a problem solver. I'm a try guy. And so when you start telling people and really believing in them, they literally rise to it. It's not just a cute thing, but statistically, we can see that it happens. What gets in the way of us doing this, having this coaching mindset? It's the same thing about being uber responsible. You actually add too much value as an owner. What does that mean? Someone comes to you with this upward jumping monkey, and they say, hey, so how do I deal with this? And you know what you do? If you're like the rest of us, you say, you know what, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? I'm maybe embarrassed to say that we get together every single day for our meeting for 15 minutes. And oftentimes I'm jumping in, try this, try that. And you know what? If someone has put a lot of ideas, a lot of thought into their idea, what happens is I might improve that idea by 5%, but I would also reduce their motivation by 75%. So instead, most leaders don't need to add value to every situation. A coach doesn't add value. It actually believes in the person that you're working with. So instead of immediately offering a solution, what we want to do is ask your team first. And I want to talk about this whole idea of asking them first. I know you're smart, but the idea is to understand that they're actually closer to the solution than you are. And so I want to ask you now, how often do you provide, just one second. Okay, so here's the poll right now. When you ask for a solution, what's your gut reaction? To be helpful and offer a solution right away, or first ask the other person, what do you think? Be honest. Like, what do you normally do? Do you normally actually come up with a solution right away because you're in a busy hurry and because you know? Or is the first thing you do is like, I'm cool. No, I'm actually going to ask them what they think. So we're running pretty tight. I'll share with you the results in just a minute. A couple last minute votes. Go ahead and click on the polling right now and let me know. It's really interesting. The challenge that we're having here is that we're in such a hurry. And if you take a look at what the results of our poll is that most of us, we want to be helpful and we offer a solution right away. You're not going to build an accountable team. You think you're being helpful and you're really not. So 67% of the people just told us that we're going to offer solutions right away. So now let's take a look at how to develop a coaching habit and create coaching questions. I mentor coaches, I coach coaches, and our coaches coach our leaders how to be coaches. So there's a series of several questions that you want to ask. I was just working with a client last week, and this is the first of the primary coaching questions I want you to understand how to ask. So of these 6, 7 primary questions, the first thing is, I noticed, instead of attacking, I noticed that you have a KPI, a key performance indicator, that you're supposed to be developing joint ventures and strategic alliances with other businesses that have our clientele, our type of clientele, and they could totally be sending us business. And we keep checking in week after week and month after month. I notice that you're really not moving it forward. What's up? So notice the language I used. I noticed that. It's not attacking. And it's also like, what's up? So what's up invites them to share instead of why not, or what's going on. So what's up, it invites them to really share what's going on. So this person shared, we'll call him Mike. Mike shared with Sherry that she wasn't doing this. And so we asked Sherry, and she said, I don't know, I haven't had time. And so he said, what's the real challenge here for you? And so he went deeper in. So the second coaching question is really fundamental. What's the real challenge here for you? Now I'm getting the person to be self-reflective. And when they're self-reflective, they say, well, the real challenge, what she shared, was that we're so concerned about immediate sales. I don't have time to think on anything that's not important and urgent. I can't do things that are important but not urgent, because I need to focus on now. And so he asked the next question, so what do you think you need to do? What's the next step? So, well, I guess what I really need to do is I need to get someone else to help me with our current online sales so that we can have so that I can actually focus on that, because I can't focus on it as well. Great. Notice how he's getting her to think like it. So here's my next step is I need to get someone else to do it. Really? So what do you need to do in order to make that happen? Well, the first thing I need to do is simplify, codify, and multiply. They know our language. So she said, I need to simplify what I do in terms of our online stores, and then I need to codify it so that someone else can do it, and then I can multiply it by hiring someone. Wonderful. When are you going to do that? So this is the accountability question. It's the when. Well, by the way, don't offer a date. Whatever they say, go with it. And usually they're going to say it faster than you'll say it, and then check and make sure it's real. So the first thing she said, well, I could do it by next week. And so he said, really? And she said, well, no, actually, it would take me a few weeks actually to get it done. Great. So just tell me a date. And so we write down the date, and then we're going to get back together. So what happened then is he said, well, what support do you need? That's your job as the leader, to give them support. So you know what I really need? What would be helpful for me is let me know who in the organization you think I can bring on to help run our online stores. And also, do we have a budget? So great. Now she's asking for something specific. And the final thing was, you asked them, what was most useful here for you? So what was most useful here for you is a tremendous question. The greatest leaders provide conversations that are growth-oriented. And so a person can take away from this and say, oh, you know what was most helpful for me? What she said was that when I realized that you were willing to not take my job away, and what you're willing to do is help me manage other people and grow myself, that was really helpful. And that you actually gave me the time and the resources to get to it, that was really helpful, and I really appreciated it. So these 6 questions are fundamental, and I suggest that you learn them if you want to try to become a coach. So we said that the process starts first with us. It's our thinking about accountability. And the second thing was about the sort of accountability, meaning it cuts up before it cuts down. And the next was understanding upward jumping monkeys, that we're actually, because of our great light, we're getting many people to depend on us too much. And then in order to start empowering the other people, we want to look at them as though they're talented, bring that out, and start asking the coaching questions instead of being a cop. Now, what happens is that people don't really perform like you want them to perform. So in this case, so she didn't actually perform several weeks later, so she didn't actually do what she wanted them to do. So now, how do you do it? We want to give them feedback. And we want to increase what we call increasing the speed of the feedback loop. And this is where most people fall apart, meaning that they're too slow and they don't take the time to give feedback. And every single time we do this, it's like, yeah, we don't really give back to people. If you look at a NASA rocket, when a rocket's taking off, do you know what percentage of the time they're actually on course? NASA's professional, they're big, and so you would imagine it's like really, it's very clean. The truth is only 3% of the time it's actually on course. Same thing if you're flying a plane from New York to Los Angeles, it's readjusting all the time. And so too, if you're doing annual reviews, you're insane. What? I'm just curious. Send me a chat and let me know if you're doing annual reviews right now. So give me a chat and let me know, do you actually do annual reviews? All right, good. So a lot of us are really doing annual reviews. So doing annual reviews is kind of like telling your wife, I love you, once a year. You know, a lot of us, we're doing annual reviews. One says, I haven't yet, but I just started the business, says Chantel. Well, the idea is annual reviews are insane. Instead, what we want to do is we want to increase the speed of the feedback loop. And this is how we build a leader-leader organization instead of a leader-follower organization. A leader-follower organization means it's all dependent on me. A leader-leader organization is constant dialogue, and it's faster feedback loop. There's something called the OODA loop. OODA loop is OODA. OODA. OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. It comes out of the military. And all this debriefing and all this fast feedback loop comes out of the military. So let's say that you're flying a plane. Another plane is coming right behind you. And you observe them, that's O. And then you orient yourself. Are they bigger than me or faster than me? And then I make a decision. I'm going to go straight up. And then you act. OODA, OODA. I go straight up. And now they go straight up also. And now what happens if I observe them and then I take too long before I orient? Or I take too long before I make a decision? Bam! So you're dead in the water. We need to increase the speed of our feedback loops. And most people don't give feedback because they don't really know how to give feedback. And feedback gets stuck. There are 3 ways that we increase accountability through feedback. Number 1 is through having meetings, which is a structure. And then in those meetings is when we can have debriefings. And we'll talk about what debriefing are. And then also by increasing training. This is how we give feedback, so we're constantly adjusting how to help people become more and more accountable. The first is meetings. If you're like most people, you probably hate meetings. Matter of fact, 47% of all business leaders hate meetings and consider them a waste of time. And over 50% of the meetings are a waste of time, and they're really ineffective. But I'll tell you, if you're a fast-growing organization, you need more meetings. If you're slow and you're not planning on growing much, don't worry about having many meetings. To me, meetings are the lifeblood of all business. It's kind of like saying, oh, if I'm a professional sports player, I don't need to practice. Are you kidding me? Meeting is where all the money is happening. But because people do them lousy, it becomes meeting soup. So I want to share with you now the best way to actually have meetings and create fast feedback. So the first thing is to have a daily Scrum meeting. Scrum is a concept of fast iterations and meeting quickly. And so we do a meeting that's 15 minutes every day. So I believe if you're meeting, you should be meeting every single day for 15 minutes. That's another conversation, but that should be tactical decisions and constant alignment. Remember, it's only on course 3% of the time. So short, fast meetings. And there's a structure. How do you structure that so that the meetings are effective? They start on time, they finish on time, they are based on key KPIs, key performance indicators, and helping people get unstuck. The next is a weekly meeting. Weekly meetings are where you're doing strategic issues, you're actually breaking bottlenecks, you're exploiting opportunities. The problem is that we mix daily meetings and weekly meetings. And what happens, especially if you don't have many meetings, then whenever someone reaches the leader, they like vomit all over them. So instead, we want to separate the types of materials, the types of materials and content that's done in each meeting. The third type of meeting that's really essential is a quarterly meeting. Quarterly meeting is when you set the theme for the quarter and you set goals and KPIs for the whole quarter, and you align everybody to the same thing so that we're all going to the same rhythm. We're all pulling and stroking in a boat at the same rhythm, and this is what we're focused on. That happens once a quarter. And then yearly is where you're literally getting offsite and you're thinking big picture strategy. Most people, if you ask them, do you have meetings? The type of meeting they have is this type of meeting, which is ad hoc meetings, solving issues we come up. If you're doing that all the time, you're actually not building a team with accountability. You're just solving problems and you're not actually growing them. You're not building asset ability. So if you would like what we call the Ultimate Meeting Mastery Guide, I just gave a full workshop on how to have effective meetings. How do you be just chat me now, the word meetings, go ahead and send me a chat and I'll be happy to send you the Ultimate Meeting Mastery Guide. Throughout this seminar, there's so much to cover in terms of accountability. I want to give you some of the content above and beyond that. We don't have time to do it. So meetings are where you make the money. And what gets in our way is most people don't have a before, during, and after a meeting. They're not set up before. They don't know the strategy, what they're going to do. They don't do effective meetings. They don't know when to have meetings, how to have meetings, and they don't do effective afterwards either. They don't do a proper follow-up. So I'm happy to share it with you. Just go ahead and send me the word meetings. I got a ton of your chats, and I'll make sure that we'll send it to you. Thank you so much. The second type of giving feedback is a debriefing. Debriefing comes from after the event. What did we do? And so the only people that should be in a debriefing meeting are the people that were there or subject matter experts. So it comes again from the military that we go and we do the strike. And so we do this mission, and now we sit back and we look at the mission and we ask these 3 bomb questions. So question number 1 is what worked. Question number 2 is what didn't work. Question number 3 is what do we need to do to improve it? And the idea here is that we ask what worked. We start with the positive. That way people are feeling good, they're not feeling threatened. And we're building a safe environment here where people can share what's working, what's not working. When we ask what didn't work, we're talking about the situation, not necessarily the person themselves. Then we ask what needs to improve. If you start to get in a habit of doing this, it's amazing. And the final thing after you determine what needs to happen to improve is you'll decide what needs to be broadcasted and then what are the next steps. So these are the 3 bomb questions to ask afterwards. What it does is it gets them to think like a self-evaluating leader. Because if we want to build accountability, we want to get people thinking like a leader, and a leader self-evaluates as opposed to waiting for you to evaluate me. This is a feedback loop. Actually, I learned this particular feedback system from Nick Sorello. If you ever have the opportunity, I strongly suggest that you check out Nick's Pizza and Nick's University. Here's how we do this with landscapers. So it's 4 quadrants. 2 of them they ask themselves, 2 of them the trainer asks. So the trainer here said, what's one thing that I did? The trainee, the person who you're evaluating said, what's one thing I did well? And then the person said, well, I cleaned up and I hosed the driveway really well. Awesome. We start off with the positive before we move to the negative. And then tell me, what's one thing that you could do to improve your performance? Self-reflective. Oh, I'm a leader. You know what I could have done? I could have greeted the owner. Very good. So now I'll tell you what I think that you did. I think that you did a great job anchoring the tree. And then also, you're right, I would agree with you that you could recognize the owner better next time. Again, we're getting them to give constant, regular feedback. By the way, if you'd like any of the feedback loop stuff, just send me a chat. I'll be happy to give you forms that you could use to increase your own feedback. Just send me the word feedback. And now I'm going to ask you a fun question. When you give feedback, what is the most important word to listen for? What's the most important word to listen for? And what I want to do is I want to share this poll with you. And okay, so what is the most important word to listen for? Is it I? Is it you? Is it if or because? I see you're putting because you probably heard me speak before. Maybe yes, maybe no. So when it comes to giving good feedback to a person, what's the most important word to listen for? I, you, if, or because? All right, we got about a quarter of the people that have voted so far. We got about a third of the people that have voted so far. What's the most important word that you think that we need to use? We got a clear winner that's coming out of it. So if you want a person to be accountable and you're giving them feedback, once they start responding to your feedback, what's the one word you want to listen for? Okay, I'm going to close the polls in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and the clear winner is because. No, that's not the word we want to listen to. It's great when it comes to marketing. It's great when you're trying to impact someone, but the main word is this word right here, I. So 50% of people said because, 32% of the people said I. So what I want to do now is I'm going to share with you why I is so important. You see, when a person starts a sentence with I chose, or I chose to do this, or I assumed that when we were doing feedback on a trade show. So I chose to actually go out into the aisles and speak to people. And I assumed that would be okay. But what I found was that didn't actually work. Or here's what I did do, or here's what I didn't do. This is where I is part of team. And so we're listening for a person to say I. And if you have a team member that's always using you statements, you know you're in big trouble. I was just mentoring a person the other day. He didn't know how to say the word I, which is a good thing in a certain sense, but it's also a bad thing because it makes it not real. So I statements make it real. Now, the 7 commandments of effective feedback. When you're giving a feedback to a person, how do you do it in a way where you're not considered a jerk, where it's in a coaching way? The first thing is make sure you got the right place and the right time. In other words, when a person's hot and just made a mistake, it might not be the best time to do it. Also, the right place. Maybe it's better to do it in a private setting or in their office or somewhere not in front of everybody else. It's got to be constructive as opposed to destructive. It has to be specific. Generalities run off employed like water off a duck's back. It has to be private. In other words, criticizing a person in front of other people is only going to tear them down. We want to focus on the action and not the person. You know, you really don't care. You've showed up so many times late. You're such an idiot. You don't care about us. Whoa. Let's focus on the action. I noticed that you haven't been able to show up to our meetings for the last few times on time. What's up? So you understand the difference in that coaching question. I spoke about him not being able to show up, and I asked the what's up question. And we're focused on the action as opposed to the person. Next, give them an opportunity for self-evaluation. I noticed that you've been showing up to the meetings late. What's up? And give them an opportunity to give self-reflection. What's really here for you? What's behind this? And then finally, think about long-term, which is about development versus the task at hand. Usually when we try to just fix it, you're only going to grow. You're not going to get accountability and ownership. You're just going to fix the immediate issue. So what we want to do is develop people by coaching them. Now, you only get free if you give up control, but you're a fool if you give up control if you don't increase competency. And so now, the only way we're going to increase competency is by increasing training. And so there are 2 types of training. Most of us know the first type of training, which is on the spot. Oh, let me show you how to do that better. The more important training is what we call a path of ascension. A path of ascension means here's where you are in the organization, here's where you can grow, and here's the different steps along the way. There's a lot to say about this. And organizations that build a path of ascension across the board and customized for each person, it's exciting. You can create a 101, a 201, and a 301, and allow a person to grow and let them understand that, hey, you can become a leader. You can't get to 201. 101 is the basics. 201 is unique job skills. 301 is about leadership development. Now, I know I'm giving you a lot of content. Don't worry, the materials will be available afterwards. I'll send you an overview in terms of our presentation today, the workshop. But if you'd like specifically to learn how to create a path of ascension guide for your employees and your team, just chat me with the word path. Because what a path does, a path of ascension, it takes your clients, your customers. I have customers on my mind. It takes your team members, and notice I use the word team, not employees. It takes your team members and it says, here's where you are and here's where you want to grow. See, they all want to grow. And if you're not giving them the clarity of what a path of ascension looks like, they're not going to know how they can grow. They're going to find another place where they can grow. The final piece is about courageous conversations. So we just said that it's about getting real and giving feedback. But in order to give feedback, we actually have to create a place that's safe and have courageous conversations. And in order to have courageous conversations, what we want to do is get real. And you have to get comfortable with being able to be real and honest, being transparent, being willing to face the hard stuff, and actually deliver consequences if people don't live up to it. It's not an easy thing. But if you do, it's awesome. And if you create a safe space, all this can thrive. I want to invite Lainey to join us. Lainey Neiman has been working with one of our clients, Jeff Jeffrey. And Lainey, I'm just going to unmute you. How you doing, Lainey?
I'm good.
Great. So when we first started working with Jeff, which was maybe about 4 years ago or so, he was worried about not being liked, and he was facing he was really facing the discomfort of confrontation. He's like the world's nicest guy. And so maybe you can just talk a little bit about why and how courageous conversations made a difference with him. And it went all the way from his mother to his brother to his team, to his members, to his customers. So maybe just tell a little bit about courageous conversations in that way.
Yes. So first we started out, I started working with him.
You can speak up just a little bit louder too.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First we started working on kind of personal issues, and that started out with having a confrontation with a courageous conversation with his 75-year-old mother. And he knew that he was going to have to report back to me that he in fact did have it. And so he told me the story that at the end of the meal, he thought he might be able to get away without doing it. But then he knew he was going to have to come back and talk to me, and he thought, okay, I'm going to have to bite the bullet here. And it went very, very well, and he was really tickled about it, and it's really changed his relationship with his mother ever since. And then he got a little more courage, and what came before that actually was some very difficult times with his brother, but that was a long process of a lot of courageous conversations. But the thing with his mother, I think, was a game changer because it gave him the belief system that he was capable. And because he's a nice guy, doesn't like confrontation, doesn't like conflict. And so then we started moving into his executive team and realizing that.
By the way, I just want to comment, with his brother, he actually had to let his brother go from the business. And courage means that it's in your best interest not to stay here. And when people have to understand this, and I have to understand too, that when a person is not performing, they don't feel good about themselves. They're drilling a hole in the boat. It's not good for them. It's not good for the company, and it's not good for everybody else. And usually when someone who's not a right fit, as soon as you let them go, everyone always says, hey, I'm so glad you finally did that. So what about his executive team?
So his executive team, again, because he was such a nice guy, he would say a lot of lovely words, but he wouldn't always follow through with them. So even though they're an awesome team, in this one all-day retreat meeting that we had, and we were talking about the sort of accountability, and I said, let me just be clear, Jeff, you're telling everybody that you will also be open for direct, honest feedback, not just you're giving feedback to them. And he said, absolutely. And then two people piped up right then and there and said, okay, so this thing you said you wanted to do, is that really going to meet your KPI this quarter? And he said, no, I don't think so. And he said, well, do you think you should do it? And that was kind of the beginning of them believing that he was going to actually take in, because it's threatening for people to give the boss that kind of feedback, but it's incredibly empowering, and it was a game changer for the executive team. And then then he moved into customers, because he's a great relationship builder, as many CEOs are. and very affable. And he started practicing being a little more assertive and having courageous conversations with customers about, okay, we've been meeting for a year, and now is the time to, you know, fish or cut bait. And he was very pleasantly surprised that his customers responded very well to that. So that was a huge revelation to him.
So if you take a look at what the results were, they were absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And this is a company that's been around for over 100 years, and their sales have increased over the last 4 years. After being in business, they've had a 100% sales increase after being in business for 100 years. What's exciting also for the team is they had a 400% increase in their own bonuses by being held accountable in the last 2 years. So accountability is good for everybody around. Suddenly, they got the 2 largest accounts that they've been calling on for over 50 years by having a courageous conversation. And they had a massive increase in what we'll call the owner thriving, more freedom and delight. And like, he's in the zone now, which is just awesome. And he's now also positioned himself by focusing on the highest and best use of his time. He's now positioned as the #1 guy in this particular industry, which is liquid, water-based lubricants,
Right.
as opposed to oil-based lubricants. And now they did a joint venture partner with someone that has $1 million machine, and they have exclusive rights to this $1 million machine. It's been incredible. And their whole team now, it's a team that's on fire, and they're accountable. And afterwards, he's totally in the zone. And maybe you just share for a minute this very quickly about when he was sitting in this parking lot he used to go to.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to say is that he does not live in the city where his company is,
Right.
which is another freedom and trust that he has in his team.
Okay, so I think that you're breaking up just a little.
Yeah, this happened. Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So in the last a couple of years ago, actually, he texted me from when he was out one of his all-day sales meetings, and he said, I don't know, do you think I'm weird? I'm sitting here in my car crying because people keep calling me, and I'm not even calling it. People that I've known for 5 years are calling me now and saying, can I meet with them? He said, everything's just turned around. So he feels like a magnet for and attracting business. As we say, he's pulling instead of pushing.
Right, which is so exciting. And he would have been on the call today, except that he was invited to fly to Argentina.
Right. For a really
just,
good reason.
by the way,
yeah.
coincidentally, they just had their best year ever after 100 years. So something is really happening. So I want to thank you, Lainey, for being part of that.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, so now I would ask you, like, who is one person that you yourself need to have a courageous conversation with? We all need to, and I'm sure you know who it is. And what's the final thing I want to share with you is about transparency. Most business owners are afraid of being transparent. We worked with Daryl Bishop. Daryl has a company called Metaltech, and what he determined was that the truth was that he realized they're going to be 20% short this month. So that's a big deal, and it was really at the end of the month, and there was hardly any time left. So because we made a shift with Daryl, that he was now sharing his numbers, and he was transparent in meeting with everybody, he's actually sharing the numbers. They came up with an idea. They said, you know what, hey, by the way, we have clients who will buy everything that we make if we just get more stuff done. And if we focus on setting up the production, we can. And so one of the persons said, you know what, I'll stay and I'll set up this production, and we'll actually put our hands on it. And what happened was, one person says, this is what I'm going to need. No problem. The couple themselves, Dana and Daryl, said in the past it would have been up to just Dana and I. And we were worrying about it because we're the owners. But now what happened was they came up with a solution. I wouldn't be able to come up on my own, and they were able to hit their numbers. Because if you put all your efforts on like one little point, it falls through. But when you distribute it evenly, you can carry a whole lot more together. And so if we can create this, a process of holding others accountable, and first and foremost, deal with our own inner game of accountability and realizing it's good for them, it's good for us. And realizing the sort of accountability starts first with us, and then we can hold others accountable. Understanding upward jumping monkeys is because we've created kind of a learned helplessness. And by really believing in people and becoming a coach instead of a cop, we empower them. And we went through the coaching questions that you can use to make sure that a person feels a sense of accountability and is able to grow themselves. Next was making it real and giving faster feedbacks, having faster feedbacks through meetings, having faster feedbacks through debriefings, having more feedback through training. And if you do all this, ultimately, in the context of a courageous conversation, which is a safe space, not the space of a jerk where it's dump and run, I'm cutting on you, then you'll be able to dramatically improve your accountability. So here's what I got, is some of us want to make the shift from moving from theory to reality. And what I have for you is an accountability implementation program. It's all about GID. You know what GID is? Get it done. And so if you really want to take your business to the next level, specifically with accountability, you're, number one, you have the mindset. There's two particular mindsets you need. Number one and number four. Number one, which is you're willing and your ego to grow both personally as well as the business. In other words, some people, they just want the business to grow. And also you're willing to be vulnerable and real. That means you have the mindset of a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. If you have the mindset that's just like they have to get it done, it's all their problem, this is not for you. Also, you have to have at least 6 employees to make this work. And you have to have at least a minimum of $1 million a year. Otherwise, the systems that we're talking about in the program is going to work for you. So what I want to do is offer you what we'll call a BDA, before, during, and after. The accountability program has 3 parts to it. So the before is, first and foremost, being able to do an assessment. We'll do an assessment of you, of your team, based on accountability, a special accountability assessment, and also an overall thriving business. Remember, thriving is about owners, it's about the asset ability, it's about your teams, your systems, your sales, your marketing, your asset ability, and we'll look at all that and identify where the issues and the opportunities are. And then during it, we're actually going to do a live workshop training. And it's taking the theory into practice. And we'll educate and train your team in skills so they can master the art of accountability while focusing on helping them build their own path of ascension, so that they themselves will start to see, wow, here's where I can go. And they'll be inspired and they'll actually learn skills that will make them greater team members. And they'll also earn more. And you'll also learn how you can do bonuses so that they're motivated by performance, not just entitlement. And the other thing that I'm going to do with you is one-on-one coaching session. So to build this culture of accountability, it doesn't happen without you. So we're going to spend an hour together and work on what is your greatest habit, the highest and best use of your time. What's getting in your way? And then I'll take you through the 5 steps so that you can learn to simplify and codify it and get other people to take some of the things out of your bucket that you're doing and allow you to focus on really growing the company. Afterwards, after we do all this with your team and with yourself, you'll actually receive something that's short-term and also long-term. So a short-term will be a 30, 60, 90-day action plan, an accountability plan, and also a longer-term accountability plan and growth plan. So plus, I have a whole bevy of wonderful tools. Thriving tools, we've developed these over the last 12 years, and the tools are guides, studies, and reports, ebooks, spreadsheets, activities, wizards, things that you actually can start doing literally with your, these are the tools that our mentors use with our clients. What's the value? Well, we spoke a little about Daniel Eli, how he went from over to several million to over 100 million, and how so many people that have done this, they've been able to catapult their businesses. They're more free. It's more of an asset. They can step out of it. They can sell it. They can have other people run it. They're happier. They're thriving. The value is huge. What's the cost? The cost is $975, and it's for the first 5 applicants. So the way you do that is either by chatting me. Just send me a chat that says, I'm in. And so the first 5 people either go to the website, getfreedomteams.com/start, or you can call us at 903-4653. And what are you going to get again? So the before is we'll do an assessment. During, we'll do live training with your team and also one-on-one coaching with you. And we'll also give you an action plan, and we'll also give you all the tools that you need to do it. So go to the website, getfreedomteams.com/start, or give us a call at 903-4653 and be one of the first. It's real, right? Daryl's done it, Jeff has done it, Daniel's done it, and you could do it too. And we've done it so many times. If you're the right person and you have this right mindset and you start thinking about, oh, should I do it or not do it? What's the best time to plant a tree? The best time to plant a tree is now. the first best time, I'm sorry, was to do it 20 years ago, but the second best time is to do it now. And so I want to give you a guarantee. You cannot get burned with such a thing. I'm passionate about doing this because my purpose and our purpose is to empower leaders to actualize their greatest potential. If you don't love it, it's really simple. You simply let us know, and I don't want any of your money if we don't provide that value. So give us a call, and I want to thank you for the time that we spent together today. And I want to encourage you to do what Sam Walton from Walmart says, which is ready, fire, aim. And at this time, if you want to make sure that you're one of the first 5, you could also send me a quick chat and just say, I'm in, because it's going fast. Okay, we already got one. We got another one. Send me a quick chat, and then we'll take it from there. At this time, I will open up for any questions. Let's see. You can send me a quick question if you have a question here on the website. Okay, so one question I have is, what's the most important thing that you'd want to do right now? So if you could do one thing right now, the first thing I would do is focus on my greatest habit, which is the highest and best use of my time. And after you figure that out, then you're going to recruit someone else that could do it, simplify and codify what you're going to do. Here's another question. Other people, I've tried to get other people to do it, but they simply don't listen and they have a bad work ethic. What do I think you should do? Okay, great. So the reason why they have a bad work ethic is because you haven't really helped them feel a sense of ownership. And so the first thing to do is to sit down with them and get very clear what's expected of them. How do I help you get to your next step? And what are you being measured by? What are your clear KPIs? And then how do we review those KPIs, and how do we help you grow in those KPIs? Okay, so I want to give you a blessing that you should be able to actualize your greatest potential and those around you. And I thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to being in communication shortly. Bye.